Thanks, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and I want to first thank everybody on the phone for your time, effort, and generosity. As a volunteer myself, I am acutely aware of how much of a time commitment this is, and we do it because we love Stanford. And I really appreciate the time you're doing as a volunteer and the way you support Stanford wherever you may be in the world. This is a really special call for us because we all love Stanford, and I think one of the things that really draws us together is Stanford Athletics. I first fell in love with Stanford Athletics when I was 7 years old, watching Jim Plunkett lead Stanford to a Rose Bowl victory. And in my time at Stanford, I loved Stanford Athletics as much as anybody. And we lived for those moments when once in a while we'd win a water polo or a tennis championship every year or two. And there was always a hope that we might make a football bowl game at some point in our lifetime. So those are the kind of things. So the reality at Stanford Athletics has changed for the better. And it's, again, part of the reason we want to celebrate that today and update you on Stanford Athletics. So let me introduce our panelists. It's my pleasure first to introduce Bernard Muir. Since July 2012, Bernard has served as the Jaquish Kenninger Director of Athletics. Under his leadership, the Cardinal recently secured its 25th straight Learfield Sports Directors Cup, presented to the most successful intercollegiate athletic department in the nation. This year, they won 7 national championships, including 6 NCAA titles. Just another ho-hum year and a tradition of excellence. It's just remarkable. Stanford has also won at least 1 NCAA team championship in each of the last 43 academic seasons, the longest such streak in the country. Bernard has presided over one of the most successful stretches in school history, having won 20 NCAA championships and 28 national titles overall during his tenure. Bernard, we look forward to hearing from you more in just a moment. Next, I'm excited to introduce our head softball coach, Jessica Allister, who's also celebrating her reunion this year. The 4th head coach in program history, Jessica joined the Cardinal in 2017 after leading Minnesota for 7 seasons. This past year, Jessica was named Pac-12 Coach of the Year after guiding the Cardinal to a 33-20 overall record to reach its first NCAA tournament since 2013. Jessica is a proud member of the class of 2004 and played softball while on campus. A second-team All-American catcher in 2004, she helped lead the Cardinal to the Women's College World Series appearances in 2001 and 2004. Welcome, Jessica. And last but not least is our third panelist and a great friend of mine, Heather Owen, the Executive Associate Athletics Director. Heather oversees the department's development efforts along with its student-athlete support services, including athletic training, physical therapy, sports nutrition, sports psychology, sports performance, and sports science. A member of the class of 1998, Heather was a basketball student athlete at Stanford. During her tenure, she was a 2-time Pac-10 All-Academic selection and helped lead the Cardinal to 3 NCAA Final Four appearances. Welcome, Heather. So thank you all for joining us. I have some questions for each of you, but let's first start with Bernard to give us an overview of where Stanford Athletics is today and what's ahead.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. And Aaron, we appreciate you putting us on the stand, if you will, to talk about all things Cardinal sports. And also thank you to all who are listening in. This is special for us. Anytime we can spread the word about Stanford, and obviously there's so many things to celebrate. Dave, you mentioned a few as it relates to the Directors Cup, but when I look back on the year, it's not only the 6 championships, but it's 900 student athletes that put on that Cardinal uniform every year, representing 36 varsity sports, which is one of the largest in the country in terms of sport offerings. And they're all determined with one goal in mind, is to get the very best education, which they will, with our high graduation rates, and then also competing at the highest level. And when you look back, every team, every program, especially those that were successful enough to win a national championship, they have a story to tell. How hard they're working, especially now when we're starting this week. We have football, who's already gone through 5 practices. Yesterday, women's soccer got started. Summer's gone, and if you as you think about it, it just flies by. It just seems like we just had graduation a couple weeks ago, but now we're here embarking on another academic year, and we're very excited. So as we look back, we had 6 national championships, NCAA championships. We had 1 in light rate rowing. We also won the Capital One Cup on the women's side, which is a tremendous feat. We finished 2nd on the men's side. And basically, they created the Capital One because we were winning this Directors Cup for 25 straight years. They said, let's split up the championships. Let's have a men's side and a women's side. And 2 years ago, we won the trifecta. We won them all. And like I said, last year, we won on the women's side. When I think about where we're headed as a program and think about the success we have, it starts with leadership. So I'm thrilled that Jessica is joining us today. You could point to every program and say, well, we've got tremendous leadership. We've had some coaching changes in the last year. We had to hire 4 coaches. I'm thrilled with who we brought to the farm. I think they provide great leadership, have great backgrounds, and I think people will be excited to get to know them. But also, when I look back on the year, we did have some what I call speed bumps, if you will, some bumps in the road, and certainly one that got a lot of attention was the admission scandal. And so that gave us pause to just look at what we're doing from an admission standpoint. Certainly, we had a change in leadership. I'm thrilled that Brian Swingley is now our new sailing coach that is coming on board, and I know he'll do a terrific job. But I think the whole scandal allowed us to pause and say, let's look at what we're doing. We're right now going through an internal review of our admissions process. I think it will probably go for until the fall here, just to look back to make sure that we didn't have any other slip up, if you will. The main thing that we had there that we were able to find is that our sailing coach, previous sailing coach, had put down names that were not legitimate sailors, and they never got in to Stanford, but yet still, we pride ourselves in integrity and doing the right thing, and so that was a miss, and now we're making sure that we just don't have that happen again. There's been a New York Times article that recently came out that was probing a little bit more as it relates to not only the sailing scandal, but also the changes that we had, many of which we just don't talk about when personnel leave for a number of different reasons, other than to announce that they're no longer in their positions. And so unfortunate that they took time to highlight this again. We want to get out of the news for that reason. We have so many other things to celebrate. But yet still, it gave us pause to say, let's make sure we put the controls in place to make sure that Stanford doesn't see itself in the news like it did this past spring. But back on the highlights, I just think we're positioned, even though with the success we had, if you talk to every one of our student athletes and our coaches, they would say there's more to come. There's so much more that we can do as a program. And so that's what we're really focused on here. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later on. But when I look at the year, we've done really well, but we think we can do so much better.
That's great. Bernard, thanks for your leadership. Really appreciate it. So let's dive into the panelists. Let me start with Jessica. Jessica, you left Minnesota in a year where your softball team was ranked #1 in the country at one point during that season, and you returned to lead a Stanford team that was struggling to find success. What brought you back to Stanford?
Stanford's home. The best 4 years of my life were my 4 years as an undergraduate at Stanford. And I tell every recruit that I meet with that if I had the opportunity to do it all again, I'd do the conditioning again, I'd do all of the classes again, I'd do all the tutoring again, all of it, because it was the best 4 years of my life. And I would do anything to be able to have another go at it. So to be able to offer that opportunity to other student athletes, I think is a dream come true. And I really just don't believe that there's a better experience for student athletes in the country. I think Stanford is the pinnacle, and it's an honor to represent it.
And Stanford's really lucky. We have a few of our coaches that were student athletes at Stanford and our head coaches, and that's an amazing case you can make. How do you kind of personalize the transition when you were looking at Stanford as a student athlete? Now, can you relate to the parents and kids in a different way?
I think so. I think you just talk about what was special about the experience. I think on paper, everybody sees the quality of the education, but what you don't see when you read the articles is the freshman dorms. You don't see the meals at the dinner table, the conversations, the people that you come in contact that you wouldn't come in contact with in any other context of life, and how those people shape you. And I think that's what really sets Stanford apart and makes it special. And so it's a nice experience to share.
That's great. Welcome home to Stanford.
Thank you.
Heather, in the last reunion campaign panel, we heard from Harry Elam, our vice provost, and others talking about student welfare. Can you talk a little bit about the athletic department's approach to student athlete welfare? I know that's now a new part of your scope of responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, student athlete welfare is paramount to Stanford Athletics. We exist to inspire champions in life, and obviously welfare would be a tremendous component within that. In terms of how we partner with the rest of the campus community, we are wanting to be, desiring to be, and working very hard to be fully integrated. I think sometimes when you talk about student athletes, they are segregated out into their own little pasture, And we lose sight of the fact that they are students who are matriculating around this campus as well. They happen to participate in a co-curricular activity, be it varsity athletics. But Bernard has really laid the foundation and the groundwork for us to be wholly integrated on that front. Now, within that, there are unique needs that student athletes need to endeavor in their craft. So when we look at nutrition, the nutritional needs of our student athletes are different by and large than most of our students. Even within the student athlete population, you could quickly surmise that there are different nutritional needs based on body type and sport that you're participating in. Psychological resources, a lot of similarities between students and student athletes. When you start to talk about performance psychology, there's a little bit of a difference there that we want to provide to our student athletes. So I'd say, Dave, by and large, we are very much trying to be integrated and in partnership with Harry Elam, Susie Brubaker-Cole, and what's happening for the rest of the student body, while acknowledging and catering to our student athlete needs where necessary.
Great, thank you. So as a follow-up question, Bernard, I know there's been a lot of NCAA legislation to deal with student welfare, and a lot of things have been imposed to make sure students are better cared for and managed. Can you just touch a little bit on the financial implications, just generally, like how that's impacted athletics? Because you're doing things you weren't doing 5 years ago. I know that has costs.
Yeah, we certainly have invested in a number of areas that Heather just mentioned. I think about sports psychology. A few years ago, we had no sports psychologists when I started. Now we have 4 people in our arsenal that are there for the students. We utilize also the campus as well too. That's so important when we talk about the integration, that we're not just sitting there isolated on our own. The investment that we've made in nutrition, believe it or not, these kids like to eat, and so we're now making well over a 7-figure investment each year, and that's in snacks between practices. That's meals certainly on the road. That's meals here at home. We've invested significantly. When we look at many years ago, we used to say there's an arms race with facilities. Now there's an arms race with food, and you know we want to do what's appropriate. We're not trying to be extravagant, right. But at the same token, we know that these kids need the nutrition in order to perform at the highest level, and so that's another area. Sports medicine. You know, all the discussions about student welfare and concussion, and that's something that is certainly of interest. We want to be innovative in what we do. We want to make sure we're taking care of our student athletes. So we're investing even more in sports medicine, athletic training, physical therapy, because we know that's really important in making sure that they have the utmost care. So all those areas, it requires a different level of investment. We have a thing called Cardinal Strong, which covers all of those areas, and we've been trying to raise money for that cause, and it's been really beneficial for us because we can put more into the student athlete experience.
Could be a great reunion gift for somebody to make, for example.
I'm just saying, that's a great idea. Just putting it out there.
Putting it out there. That's great. Thank you. Jessica, let's shift back. I know a lot of people on the phone are interested in how recruiting and admissions interact with each other. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how this process at Stanford works and maybe how it differed at other schools you've worked at?
It's very different, and I think it's different in a great way. I think our admissions process is a strength, and it's something that as a coach, it's a little bit longer than everywhere else, but I think it's a great thing. I think our admissions process is very thorough when they're making the decisions. They do a 360 view of the student athlete to make sure that they're a great fit, both in the classroom and in the environment. And I'm confident that every student athlete that is admitted and joins us at Stanford is able to not only do the work, but contribute to the university. So I think it's a strength, and I think we do it very well.
And is it another way also to evaluate somebody's interest in Stanford? If you start pushing back on that process, you can tell that kid's probably not at Stanford.
Absolutely. That's actually a conversation that we had yesterday. If they are willing to go through all the things that they need to go through to get here, then they're coming and they're going to love it and they're going to take advantage of it.
That's great. Thank you. Bernard, I know athletics has gone through a strategic planning process recently. What are some of the highlights you could share with us, and what are you most excited about?
Well, I have to credit many people on our team. Heather, sitting next to me here, has been very instrumentally involved in that process. We rolled this out to our staff about a year ago, and now we're in the midst of trying to execute on that plan. The primary objective is to make sure that our student athletes have the best experience, both academically and athletically. We think we need to make an investment even further. We want all student athletes to experience that success across the board. And we haven't put, to be quite frank, we haven't put every program in a position to really enjoy that. And so that will be a big part of the plan here, to make sure all 900 have a chance to wake up in the morning and think that they have a chance to be successful, win championships, and really enjoy the overall experience. And it's an experience for life. So it's not just we're worried about what happens in the 4 or maybe 5 years in some instances. It's what happens after the fact. We've surveyed alumni. We had about 16,000 surveys went out last year, and we got a great return back about asking student athletes, former student athletes, to reflect on their experience, and did we do right by them? And if we didn't, what can we do to make it better? And so we're very excited about providing that top experience. We have a term that we use, we want to be in the hunt. And so our goal is for all 36 sports to wake up thinking we can be in the hunt for a championship, and we want to put them in a position to do that. We want to engage with the community to a broader level, not only the Stanford immediate community, the campus community, but beyond our borders, to talk about this unique story about intertwining academics and athletics and doing it at the highest level. We think that's a unique opportunity for us that only Stanford could really tell at the highest level across so many different mediums. And so that's a big portion of what we're trying to do with our strategic plan as moving forward.
That's great. Thank you. This is kind of either for Heather or Jessica. As both former Stanford student athletes, and we think a lot about how we keep student athlete alumni engaged. Kind of talk to each of you, like how has it worked from your own experience being a student athlete alum, and what has Stanford done to engage that community to keep them connected to either their program specifically or athletics or the university as a whole? What have you seen that's worked here?
I'll take a first crack at it. For me, specifically as a former student athlete, I think the best engagement points are with my team. Mm-hmm. So as we look back, for me, it would be women's basketball. I've gotten to know people who played well before me, people who played after me, and there's a common bond shared there. I think that bond also extends to the larger athletics community. So that's been neat for me as well, to meet, again, people who came before me and people who have come after me, but who have worn the Stanford uniform. And then more broadly speaking with the campus community, I think that's where, Stanford does a nice job of finding other affinities and groups that connect people. So for me, I've still got great friends from my freshman dorm, and we still connect there. But I would say as a former student athlete, my primary mode of connection is through my team.
Yeah. So Jessica, talk about in the years you were away from Stanford, how did you stay connected as a student athlete?
Yeah, I think my story is a little different just because I was in the sport. So
Right.
When you're in the softball world, you're still around your colleagues and your former coaches and former teammates who are in the profession. So I stayed very connected, whether it be competing against Stanford. Actually spent 3 years here as an assistant coach as well. So Stanford has been a large part of my life ever since I left the farm.
Great, thank you. Great. So Bernard, talk us through a little bit. Let's just take a break on the Q&A as much as I think there are a lot of people out there knowing that our football season kicks off in about 3 weeks. Any insights you can just share either on the first days of practice or just kind of how the team is kind of positioned for the season?
I think the one thing that we were just with David yesterday at a function, and obviously very excited about the first 5 days of practice, the health of our program, especially just the depth that we have at a variety of positions, especially when you look at the offensive and defensive line that we haven't had in the last couple of years. We've had a lot of injuries and been banged up, but this year we really feel like going into camp, at least the first few days of camp, knock on wood, that we've been really healthy. The schedule is daunting. This in some prognosticators' opinions, this might be the toughest schedule in the country. I don't know who the AD was that scheduled these games, but certainly we're going to be challenged right off the bat. We're playing a tough Northwestern team that was in the Big Ten title game last year. We are going to play our conference rival in USC on the road, and then we'll have to go to Central Florida to go to Orlando and play in the heat against a tough Central Florida team just to start off the year. So we're going to be tested. I think
you get a breather when Oregon comes
and
in.
we get a breather. I don't know. I'm not saying that on record, but it certainly will be challenging. And so we'll know a lot about ourselves right off the bat. But I think our young people are really excited about the challenge, and that's why you come to Stanford, to play in games like this against the very best and see how well you do.
How does David Shaw craft the leadership transition when you lose a lot of seniors from a team? How is that kind of developed and passed traditionally down to the next generation?
They're constantly trying this. Basically, what we're doing in all sports across the board, and Jessica could talk to this is leadership development. We like to think this is one of the largest leadership development programs across the campus, if you will. Where else do you get up and you know that you have to work hard in order to advance? And even if you have setbacks, you have to get back again. And so for David, he's constantly looking. It starts with the recruiting process and identifying the young people that can come and understand the value of a Stanford education and competing at Stanford and what that means. And then when their time comes, whenever that may be, that they're ready. And we're always looking at the next play, the next season, if you will. There's a great opportunity for us, and I think our young people are ready to embrace that challenge, and they just have to be ready. And some are ready earlier than others, but I think if you're part of this program, that breeds success across the board, and you get that notion that this is what the responsibility is if you're going to put on the Stanford uniform.
That's great. Thank you. Let me just remind people on the phone. So we have a number of questions queued up, but if you want to submit a question, go to the Zoom app and send an email to eholderson, HULDERSON @stanford.edu, and we'll keep the questions coming. Heather, let me shift over to you. So you've been at Stanford Athletics since 2008, plus 4 years as a student athlete. What changes have you seen during your tenure? I think some of you are probably managing now, things that didn't exist before. But what's been different as a student athlete has evolved at Stanford?
Let's see, probably the obvious for me is the competitive success continues to rise. I think the young people coming in, our student athletes, are more and more impressive year over year. In my time here as an employee, I think the pressure to continue to provide the resources to the student athletes has also gone up over time. I will say that the thing that has stayed consistent is the focus on process within Stanford Athletics. So Stanford Athletics teaches you how to succeed and fail and develop a resilience through this process we call sport. That has remained the same. The challenge is becoming staying true to Stanford and its mission today in the larger landscape of intercollegiate athletics, the arms races that are happening. And I think we are, as Bernard alluded to, behind in some areas, and we are not putting all of our student athletes in a position to be in the hunt. And we have to be there in order to provide the true Stanford Athletics experience for all of our student athletes to reap the benefits of that. So it's a lot of the same, however, more pressure to stay in the same lane here in 2019.
So as a follow-up question to that, and it's really for you, Heather or Bernard. So we're all reunion volunteers. We're making our own reunion commitments as well as getting others to give. What things would you like us to focus on as volunteers or donors in terms of what Stanford Athletics needs in terms of support, which you can make over a 5-year pledge to Stanford, by the way. Let me just remind you of that. What does Stanford Athletics need the most at this point for support?
Yeah.
I'll jump in real quick because I get excited about that question. I'd say first off, the Buck Cardinal Club, that's our annual fundraising arm. Certainly anytime we can get dollars in the door for Buck Cardinal, it gives us flexibility to support our student athletes. We do have some long range plans that we're going to continue to work on and evolve. They're more significant in the dollars needed in order to get things moving forward, but we're thinking about Cardinal Strong, as I mentioned earlier, which provides all the student athlete services. Investing in that certainly can help us move the needle. We're going to be at some point talking about facilities. I see Jessica sitting here and looking at her venue. We were just in a meeting yesterday. We're trying to make some modifications. We haven't gotten to where we need to be. And again, I think when we talk about facilities, there's an arms race in that as well too. We're not trying to win the arms race. That's not who Stanford is. But we want to provide what is necessary in order to compete at a high level. And so I pick on softball because Jessica's here. That's an area where we need to invest in, but I can go down the list of a number of sports where we need to invest. We have a thought that we want to eventually build kind of what we're calling an innovation lab that will have those student services that we talked about earlier, all housed in one building that we can provide adequate space for 900 athletes to train at a given time. What also is core to Stanford is being able to endow a number of positions and a number of scholarships. We have a great track record. We've built up a tremendous endowment for those who've come before and really had a vested interest in Stanford. We need to continue to do that, especially on the scholarship front as we're trying to compete across the board. We have a number of scholarships that need to continue to be endowed so we can add greater offerings for a number of sports and allow them to really thrive and compete. And what that means for young people in terms of getting a quality education, and we can provide that through scholarship, that means a tremendous amount. And that's something that I know our student athletes cherish greatly. So those off the top of my head, Heather, if there's anything else I've missed, we should comment about it. But I think those are probably the critical areas moving forward.
Great, thank you. Great. So Jessica, just give us a little preview of what's on deck for Stanford softball in 2020. How does your prognosis look for the team?
We're excited. We're really excited. After making it back to the tournament last year, I think that there's a really good energy and renewed excitement and confidence within the returners. So I know that they've been busy at work this summer and excited to get back on campus and get back to work with big dreams. I think we bring in 6 freshmen who are going to really, really help us. And the goal is to take the next step this year. But the best part is how excited they are about it and how the belief has been expanded, and they feel good about it.
So who do you compete with the most head-to-head to get recruits for your program?
I would say the ones that we come up against often, UCLA and Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're looking at the top of the softball standings nationally, and then also, they're not Stanford, but good academic schools.
Yeah.
We come up against them.
Great, thank you. Good. Bernard, so you wear a lot of hats at Stanford and outside of Stanford. You're involved with a lot of different groups. Last year, you chaired the NCAA selection committee. Any insights on that other than the fact you get to spend more time with your family? Now you're not the chair of it. What was that experience like?
It certainly was a tremendous experience. I served 5 years on this committee, 1 year as chair, and I was joking with some people early on. I said I really enjoyed this year because I got to wear a lot of TV makeup, which was interesting. But all in all, won a phenomenal championship with Virginia winning the national title, but really competitive games, especially when you got to the regionals and beyond. And so to go through that process, see the inner workings of college basketball, and I know where we want to take our program as well. We want to compete in this thing, and we've got some work to do to get there. And it's the similar investments that we talked about with other programs. We need to do the same for basketball. So it gave me even more of a yearning to get our program, continue to support Coach Haas, and make sure that Stanford gets its prominent place in March Madness.
Great, thank you. This one's for Heather, and anybody else weigh in. So there have been a lot of proposals for quite a while about paying college athletes. What have the discussions been like in terms of internally or externally? Like, what will the implications be for a program like Stanford if anything like that took hold?
Yeah, I'll take the lead here from Bernard and I think our upper management with our leadership with the president and the provost. I think anytime we talk about pay for play, it will be a difficult, if not a non-starter at Stanford. I can envision a situation where maybe you could play with the characterization of the compensation to make it more palatable. Mm-hmm. Although that's probably more of an academic exercise than anything at this point. I think Stanford has done a really nice job, even back to, you look at the Hennessy era when he came out very directly and said, this is not something Stanford will participate in. Again, until the details flesh out and we have more guidance from the judiciary and potentially the legislative branch, I think there's still a lot of variables that could come to bear. But by and large, that is not something that I see Stanford taking on.
Yeah, I would agree. I know that the NCAA has a working group right now that is looking at name, image, and likeness and see if we can have any flexibility in our rules. But at the same token, from a Stanford perspective, we know that outright pay for play is not something that we will subscribe to, and we'll do something different if that comes to fruition. We think everything that we're doing is tied to the educational mission of the university, and it should be tied to that. And that's what we are setting out to do. And anything that steers us away from that is not something where Stanford wants to go.
Yeah. Bernard, can you, a question that's come in from one of our participants. So we talk a lot about the breadth of sports, 36 varsity sports.
Yes, right.
And, a number of them win championships, some don't, but are very competitive, and others are kind of on the rise. How do you balance out keeping 36 sports viable when you also have some sports that are club status and one gender, not the other? How do you kind of work that into the mix? Because you have people that are very passionate about a sport that they either played at Stanford or have come into through their kids or something. How do you kind of balance all that out with a very complicated program?
Yeah, one we're constantly looking at, are we being true to those student athletes? Are we giving them a chance to go compete? 36 is a large offering. We don't want to reduce that offering because we think, when you look across the board, we have a great story to tell, but we want to further enhance it. The other thing I should say is we oversee not only varsity sports, we oversee club sports, intramurals, and recreation. So when we talk about inspiring champions in life, we're thinking of all those people that we think there's something you can garner from being a part of a club, being a club sport student athlete. We think there's something to garner if you just want to work out. So we're thinking of holistically about the entire student experience, entire campus experience, if you will, and making sure that you have sound mind, body, and spirit. And so that's something that we constantly think about moving forward. But as it relates to the 36, we want them to have the best experience. And we think that's a good number. We're not trying to increase that or decrease that. We think 36 is a great number, but now let's make sure we can enhance the overall experience for them.
Great, thank you. Heather, since you started your career in annual giving in the Buck Carmel
Mhm.
Club, talk a little bit about how some donor can feel like their gift makes a difference at the Buck Carmel Club level, because a lot of people look around and see buildings on campus or hear a scholarship or a named coach position. That's not the majority of donors at Stanford. Can you talk a little bit about how annual giving fits into the whole
Absolutely.
strategy?
Yeah. We've used this moniker many times. Annual giving is the lifeblood. You talk to any leader, I'm sure on campus, I can speak for Bernard. The annual dollars raised through the Buck Cardinal Club allow us to field 36 teams. It fields the operating budget. It closes the scholarship gap for us. It provides a lot of the support services through Cardinal Strong. And I think that what's neat in terms of being a donor to the Buck Cardinal Club is you are able to connect yearly with the programs that you have an interest in. So while your dollar may not go directly to softball, you are able to indicate that you have an interest in softball, and then you are able to form a relationship with that team. I think that's one of the best benefits there. And, if you want to have relationships with all 36, you can accomplish that, although that's probably quite a social calendar. But for us, those annual dollars are absolutely critical to do what we do. And we're looking to grow that base and continue to form that community for the athletics department.
Great, thank you. So Bernard, you use a phrase very often where you say inspire champions in life. Can you share a little bit about what you think about it? And then Jessica, I'd love to have you just kind of translate like how a message like that, even if it wasn't publicly shared with you when you were a student athlete, like how you think about that now and how you might relate that to your athletes.
Well, I think it's part of a story that we're telling, and we certainly tell this to prospects who are considering Stanford. And then when they get here, we want to make sure we, like I said, do right by them, that we deliver what we promise and hopefully over deliver. And what we mean by that is that we think there's something that you can gain from having this athletic experience, academic and athletic experience, that you will carry with you for the rest of your life. You will continually draw from it. We have two former Stanford student athletes here who can speak to that even more eloquently. But at the same token, we think that this is something that we, each and every day when you wake up and you're going through the struggle and the perseverance to be the best student that you possibly can be, as well as the best student athlete you can possibly be, we think you can only get that here. And you're going to have an experience like no other. And it doesn't mean necessarily you're going to be putting on championship rings, but you're going to have a bond with each other, with your coaching staff, with other people that are in our department that support you, and other folks on campus who are supporting you as well too. And that's what we're trying to, when we say inspire, that's what we think about each and every day.
It's an amazing tradition at Stanford. A lot of the most generous benefactors at Stanford have been student athletes. and it's not a coincidence. I think a lot of them are kind of driven on a lot of categories of life, and they continue to kind of carry that on through the rest of their lives. So it's not insignificant. I think that's also why student athlete engagement as young alums and continuing as an alum really matters a lot.
And the one thing that goes along with Inspire, which I also think about, is just passion.
Yeah.
Right? So people have passion about their particular sport. They have passion about having success. And so you have to bring that. And that's something that we look for when we're making hires for staff, when we're making hires for coaches. Like, are you passionate about the game, and are you passionate about this place?
Yeah.
And if you have that, you're gonna stand a chance to be very successful here.
That's great. Jessica, how does that phrase kind of inform where you are now, and also how you talk about it with parents and student athletes?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces. I think one, intercollegiate athletics is special in that never again in your life are you going to work this hard with this many people towards one common goal. And the journey there is the reward. And so we all have these things that we're striving towards, and we all hope that at the end of the day, we hit the podium and get the trophy and do all these things. That's one fleeting moment. And really what you're going to remember is waking up every morning and, getting after it with your best friends.
Great.
And the trust that's kind of built there. So I think the other thing, Stanford will humble you quickly. And if you want to come and you want to be the star, this isn't necessarily the place for you, because most of the time there's going to be someone on this campus, who has exceeded your, what you've done. And so I think it's a good place to continue to strive to be great and just to be inspired by the people around you. And I don't think there's a better place for that than you.
That's great. Thank you. Heather, given your long history with women's basketball and your close association with Tara, can you give people just a little glimpse of what's going on with their program now? I know they've had a dynamic group of people that are about to land on campus, and just give a little flavor of what's going on with women's basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been answering this question a lot lately. I've been over to Maples to watch the team a handful of times over the summer in their sessions. And I think that the team will play a very, very exciting up-tempo style of play this year. However, to your point, Dave, we've got a lot of young people on the team. So I think you will see flashes of brilliance, and then probably the opposite of brilliance, whatever that may be.
Teachable moments.
Because there you go, opportunities. The athleticism across the freshman class alone is unbelievably inspiring and staggering to watch. They still look like 18-year-olds. They're trying to digest Tara's playbook piece by piece, which is not easy when you're 18 coming from high school.
Right.
So
were you not dunking as an incoming freshman when you came to Stanford?
we'd have to go back and look at the tape on that. Fortunately, there is no tape. So
I think I saw you dunk.
yeah, exactly. Right? Do
Yeah,
you remember that?
I
That's good.
Google
Fran Beliebe.
Yeah. She's fantastic.
Yes, she has been the talk of the athletics department, and many male staff members have sheepishly admitted that they cannot do that and never could do that. So it's been fun, and I think they'll be a very, very exciting team.
That's great.
A lot of upside.
So for all of us, wherever we may be in the country or the world, we're planning to come back to campus for a reunion. Obviously, there's going to be a football game. And we'll, of course, we'll win the football game because that's our homecoming gift from Bernard. What else should they do on campus? One thing, it's been in the last 5 years since we were back for our last reunion cycle. The Home of Champions is really spectacular. So Bernard or Heather, just touch a little bit what that is and why that is definitely a must hit on people's itineraries when they're back on campus.
We 3 years ago decided that we had a Hall of Fame, if you will, that was really getting dated. I like to joke around that when we were closing the place down, we were taking VCRs out of the building, and we thought we need to really have a nice tribute to all the history of Stanford Athletics, and so we had a space. We had a gym floor that was not regulation, so we would have noon pickup games occasionally, but it was really not used for practices. And so we thought this would be a great place to showcase the history of Stanford Athletics and what is going on currently. And so now this is a space dedicated to just that effort. If you're a student athlete and wore the uniform at some point, you can come back and find your name. There's a kiosk that we have made sure that all student athletes that have ever worn the uniform have a chance to go back and bring their families and tell stories about when they played at Stanford. And then also we highlight certainly the championships won, We highlight Olympians. We highlight the two-sport athletes. And it's an ever-changing space. That's the other thing that we wanted to make sure that this was not something that just we put together and then it kind of dust collects. And so we want this to be ever evolving. The other thing I would say is you walk into the space, which is right next to Maples. It's right in the Arriaga Family Sports Center in the heart of it, right in the heart of all the activity with our coaches' offices nearby, is that there's great stories to tell. And so hopefully that's reflected throughout the space. And there's a humility about Stanford Athletics that we show. We only have one Director's Cup that's on display. We only show.
You don't have a room big enough for all 25, I think.
Well, I think people are using it as candy jars in offices and what have you. But no, we don't take that lightly. But we only show one Director's Cup. We only show the last 4 national championships. And we think that's important to say, hey, it's not about just collecting trophies. It's about the stories behind those trophies. And that's what we try to highlight.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're in the lightning round now. So first thing, I love this again for any of the 3 of you. So what are some of the ways that Stanford student athletes are able to integrate with the greater Stanford community? And I think also Heather, as a former student athlete, Jessica, as a coach, getting your athletes involved. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like what are student athletes doing now to engage with the broader community?
Well, it starts with the freshman dorms. You know, the freshman dorms, I tell everyone, I think are the best thing that Stanford does. And it's funny when you're talking to recruits, the first thing they're like, wait, I live with a regular student and I don't know who it's going to be until I get on campus, and they're scared. And then I tell them, no, you're going to love it. It's wonderful. And I just think the experience of the freshman dorm is unique and wonderful. I think they meet people that they would never come in contact with. And I think they forge bonds with people that exist once they're done. I know some of my best friends from my days at Stanford were people that were on my floor in my freshman dorm. So I think that is where it all starts. And I think it kind of fosters itself from there. But
Bernard, I think Bernard, so you are also the parent of a Stanford student athlete. What has that experience been like, both for your daughter as well as being a parent? Like, how has that experience kind of informed your thinking about Stanford?
Well, it's been pretty eye-opening in the sense that, you know, we've gone, I've seen the ups and downs now close to home. I get the call or the bump occasionally as she's going out to practice. It's not an easy transition from high school into Stanford and into, you know, the workload and trying to be a student athlete. But yet still, there are moments where you say, my goodness, how this student, how my daughter has grown up over the course. She's now going into her senior year. It's fun to watch that evolve. And so there's a struggle, but at the same token, she's finding her way and finding what she's passionate about. And so to see that as a parent up close has been pretty rewarding.
Great, thank you. Good. Okay, a couple last questions. So Bernard, talk a little bit about the Pac-12 network. Given where there's been a lot of press about how that is done, what the future is. Anything you can share about how that?
Yeah, I would say the Pac-12 network is kind of a work in progress. In terms of the exposure it has provided, especially for Olympic sports, there's been a great benefit. Where it's gotten a lot of press recently, and to be quite frank, is we just haven't had as much distribution as we would have hoped at this point. But yet still, we think this is a valuable tool that is owned solely by our member institutions, and we think there's great upside to come down the road. And we have heard from our fan base, especially from our alums, about some of our late start times in football and some of the game dates in which they're played. We're still trying to work through those things. That's going to be a work in progress. But from the main emphasis of why we created the Pac-12 networks, it was truly for the sense of showcasing. And in Stanford's case, there's a lot to showcase. And so for that, I'm thrilled to have that opportunity and that vehicle to highlight Stanford sports.
Great. Natalie, thank you for that question. Your buddies Heather and Bernard say hello. Good. So final couple questions. So let's just kind of go from panel to panel. So think about, as you're coming into this year, what are you most excited about coming into the academic? You know, we're a month from the students arriving, seasons will begin by the time our freshmen arrive. What are you most excited about as it relates to your work at Stanford?
Well, I'm excited to really embark on the strategic plan, to really tell the story to a number of people who are interested in helping us to a greater degree. I think there's a great opportunity there. Of course, I'm excited to see our student athletes compete. It's always fun. You know, last year I think we had over 300 events, live events here on this campus. And so to see our student athletes put on the uniform and go try to win games is a lot of fun. So that we get back to that core. And that's the other thing I should say to the folks on the line here is, if you're back here on campus, come see these events, come see these student athletes perform, because it's really rewarding to watch. Their ability to just put their heart and soul into a sport and try to do their very best is enjoyable.
Okay, thank you. Heather, how about you?
Yeah, I would echo much of what Bernard just said. I'm really excited for the student athletes to come back. As you both stated earlier, football's here, women's soccer is reported. We'll see the men's soccer team, field hockey, cross country will start. And it's fun to see, more than fun, it's rewarding, it's gratifying to see our student athletes coming back and putting it all out on the line. That's the process. That's why we all work here. And that's what we're trying to do. More acutely, I am super excited to execute on the strategic plan and to continue to share our vision, to drive support for that vision, and then working with the student athlete support areas to continue to bolster and enhance those areas in a Stanford appropriate manner, again, to put young people in a position to succeed.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, how about
Yeah, I
you?
have two. As a coach, I can't wait to get back on the field. You know, you can only be in the office for so long, and I'm ready to get back on the field and get to practice because I love practice. But I can't wait for fall sports. I mean, I'm ready for volleyball to play. I'm ready for football. I'm ready for both soccers. I mean, cross country, everything. I don't know that you could put together a better group of teams, and they are a blast to watch. So I can't wait for the fall sports to get going.
That's great. Thank you.
And Jessica touched on something there that what's really neat about this environment is everyone supporting each other. And so it's not unheard of if your softball coaches come to the volleyball match or vice versa,
Or the athletes,
or the student athletes as well too.
Right.
That's a great vibe on our campus, and that's something that we cherish as well too.
Final question for Bernard. The classic question, Bernard. What keeps you up at night? Not the fact you've got teenage daughters, anything else. Job-wise, what keeps you up at night as it relates to Stanford?
You know, it's just making sure that we continue to push forward. Complacency is something that you hear a term in business, and I just never want us to. I think sometimes people think, okay, what championship are you going to win this year? And I don't think sometimes people understand how hard it is to actually win a championship. And so we don't take that for granted. I don't take the Director's Cup for granted. Not that it's keeping me up awake at night. Occasionally I might get up, but I'll get back to bed.
You pass a trophy on your way.
But at the same token, I just think about, making sure that we get a chance, as we were talking about earlier, that everyone gets a chance to at least vie for an opportunity to win, but also doing it the right way. And so even like we were talking about earlier, the setback that we had this year that we experienced, we never want to make sure we want to make sure that does not happen again. And so it's things like that where we're vulnerable. The lights are bright. Everybody knows that, and working in our athletic department. And so we want to make sure we stay on the fairway and do the right thing, and yet enjoy success. So I wouldn't say it keeps me awake, but it's something that is on my mind, top of mind, and we just want to make sure that we excel in every area.
So in wrap up, so I'm very jealous of whoever gets to do this call a year from now, because you're going to be commenting on the 2020 Olympics and the medals that Stanford won more than any other country in the world, basically. So it's going to be another fun year ahead for Stanford at Stanford and abroad. So this is a very special place, and I want to thank Bernard, Heather, and Jessica for joining us. What I want to do now is I want to give you back the gift of time, 10 minutes. So I want you to write a check, call your financial advisor, or make a reunion phone call, people. Let's get busy. We've got a lot of great things to do. Thank you for all your hard work on behalf of Stanford. We look forward to celebrating all the reunion success in the fall when you come back. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Go Stanford.
Go
Thank
Stanford.
you.